So you've heard that using high ISO is not an issue at all anymore.
But then you go out shooting and take some images at super high ISO and they look like garbage. So what's the deal?
In this week's episode of the Bird Photography Show, we will share our best tricks that will enable you to get fantastic looking images at any ISO.
Well, Jan, I've just returned from Colombia a few weeks ago doing some flight shooting for hummingbirds. These days, with the ability to shoot at higher ISOs, and of course what you really are after is the faster shutter speed, we're able to get some incredible images, and it was only because we could shoot using ISO 6400, ISO 12800, and that allowed us to get the shots we were after.
This is something you could have never done in the past with your 7D Mark II camera, for instance, could you?
It's so crazy how much things have changed in just a few years. Like shooting with my old 7D II, I would really never want to go over like ISO 1600.
To be honest, I actually even like using higher ISOs in good light now. Because sometimes you just have nice light and you want to use low ISO, but then some crazy action is happening and everything kind of becomes blurry. So my go-to is probably 1600 ISO, even in decent sunlight now, because it usually gives me that 1000, 2000s of a second in shutter speed, and that in return allows me to never really miss any kind of action moment.
You know, to be honest, and I'm still kind of going through this process, you kind of have to change your mindset when it comes to higher ISOs. You really have to trust the new software and the new tools we have to deal with noise, because it truly is amazing the file quality that you can end up with if you use the right software programs.
Adobe just does a very poor job of dealing with the noise in any mirrorless cameras, RAW files. Basically, how Adobe interprets this RAW file actually makes the files look very noisy and very kind of dull and colorless.
I think this is where a lot of people get really discouraged. Oh, I heard Jan and Glenn say you could shoot at ISO 12800, and then they open it up in Lightroom or Adobe Camera Raw, and they're like, those liars, terrible. No, you have to do some pre-processing these days. And there's a few software programs that people are using. DXO Pure RAW and also Topaz Denoise AI. Both are good, both have their uses, and I actually use both, but I think if I had to have only one, for me, it would be DXO Pure RAW. What about you, Jan?
DXO Pure RAW has made it possible to use these high ISOs on a consistent basis. It gets rid of all the noise in the background and still maintains the integrity of the small feather detail.
Yeah, it's quite magical. By the way, DXO Pure RAW is coming out with a new version, or it's actually just come out. So here at the Bird Photography Show, we don't want to just tell you about stuff, we want to do some testing. So I took some of my photos from this recent trip to Colombia, shot at ISO 6400 and even 12800. We ran them through DXO Pure RAW 2, DXO Pure RAW 3, and DXO Pure RAW 3 with some sharpening applied. So when we start having a look at some of these files here, what we can see is across the board, DXO Pure RAW 3 does a better job. It's got a new mode, a new type of AI noise reduction, and without exception, it did a better job than DXO Pure RAW 2. It's not like blow you away, worlds different, but I think anybody who looked at the files would say that it indeed does a better job.
The only thing you have to be aware of with the Deep Prime XD mode is that it has a slight tendency to cause banding in fine background transitions. Because it gets rid of the noise so aggressively, you will see some banding in certain files, whereas if you use the Deep Prime that leaves a little bit more noise in the background, you won't have that issue and it processes the files faster.
I was curious to see how the sharpening modules would do.
Yeah, sharpening is actually a good point, Glenn, because in the past we always turned off the lens sharpening because it just seemed to overdo it a bit. The sharpening was very, very aggressive. So how did you find the difference between 2 and 3?
I think I would still recommend just not using any of those sharpening modules for a couple of reasons. One is that we don't have the control we'd really want to dial in the sharpening, and it can over sharpen certain areas. In DXO Pure RAW 2, the file took on my computer 1 minute. Pure RAW 3, with the new module, it took 5 minutes.
On my M1 Max MacBook Pro, it takes 12 seconds to do Deep Prime and 25 seconds to do Deep Prime XD and the same amount of time to do Deep Prime XD with the sharpening. So the kind of computer you have will definitely influence your results heavily. Just let it run the denoising and then you can do the sharpening in Photoshop, in Lightroom, where you have more control over it as well. So that, for me, makes the most sense as a workflow.
Why don't we take a look with your rifle bird that you shot at high ISO, how you might do that?
So if I just open this file in Camera Raw, we can see again, it's noisy, it looks very bad. So let's run it through DXO Pure RAW 3. So let's turn all of these off and run it through there quickly. Then I just open that DNG file in Adobe Camera Raw. That's my go-to workflow. We can see now that there's a lot less noise in the image, but we still have nice detail in the file, but the image still doesn't look 100% right. And this is the second kind of downfall of Adobe, and the reason that Glenn and I developed our ProSets, because the colors are still not perfect. And so I go into the profile menu and select one of my ProSets that I like the best. My go-to is usually the vibrant, more contrast, but we created over 20 ProSets that give you a great starting point in terms of color, and also a great sort of preset that helps you to get your raw files right with just one click. So I picked the one that I like the best, in this case vibrant, more contrast, and then I would just make a few more tweaks on this individual file and open it up in Photoshop. And then once we're in Photoshop, I will run a few things that I teach you exactly in my masterclass, but it's basically a combination of curves, layers, and selective color that I do on the bird in different areas. And I also like to select the background so that I can treat the bird and the background individually, because on a black bird like this, I want to lighten certain areas on the bird, and I probably either want to darken or brighten the background as well to make the bird stand out more. And then on this image, I'll definitely make a few separate curve layers where I can brighten the colors on the throat, brighten the nice golden colors on the belly of the bird. I do overall saturation and a few more curves and levels layers. And then there's one question here. You can see that kind of bright tree right behind the bird. Would you agree that that probably has to go?
That one definitely has to go.
And when it comes to removing that stick, what I usually like to do, I like to use the clone tool, and I literally cut the stick in little separate little pieces. And then on its own layer, I use the patch tool and I circle the cut off areas. I drag them onto a clean area, and then it will do a very good job of removing all the stick for me. And then at the end, I might just only have to clean up certain areas a bit more with the clone tool. In a very short amount of time, all those sticks are gone. And this is exactly what I also teach you in my masterclass, more slowly and step by step.
I do the same as you. I throw all my files through DXO Pure RAW. When I open them up in Adobe Camera Raw, I use one of our ProSets. The first step of my basic workflow in Photoshop is to create a copy of the background layer and to apply Topaz Denoise AI to that top layer. Especially the low light module, I find it does a very good job of just doing a nice little bit of sharpening, which I can still have the ability to throttle with a slider, even if I like kind of how it overall sharpened the image, but it did a little bit too much in some areas. Because I did it as a separate layer, I can simply mask it out if it got a little bit too much sharpening in some areas. So what do you think, Jan? Do you think that DXO Pure RAW 3 is necessary? And are you going to get this program?
I don't think it's necessary to upgrade, but I will definitely upgrade because any little increase in image quality is worth the extra money for me. But we run it as a business. So if you're an amateur photographer who has Pure RAW 2, it's probably fine for now, unless you're getting a new camera, because the old models will not support a new camera model. So if you get a new camera that, like an R8 for instance, only Pure RAW 3 will support that down the track, and Pure RAW 1 and Pure RAW 2 will not do that.
The Bird Photography Show tip of the week. What's the best noise reduction workflow for you? You absolutely have to be using some form of third-party noise reduction software.
You can kind of mess around in DPP or Camera Raw or Lightroom, but it just won't give you the same results.
Like many things in life, there's no perfect answer for everyone, but as I already said, if I had to pick just one, I would pick DXO Pure RAW.
Same for me, that's what I use most of the time.
And as Jan already mentioned, you don't need DXO Pure RAW 3, but if you're gonna get a new camera or if you just want the absolute best results, it's probably something you should consider. And so for me, it's worth it. You do perhaps wanna download the trial version. There's a link down in the description. And test it out and make sure that it works with your current computer, because you don't want to buy it and then be disappointed with the performance. So for me, the ultimate denoising workflow here, it's going to be DXO Pure RAW 3 with the new module. And then I'm going to go in when I process my raw file, I'm going to use my ProSet. I'm going to get great colors, great starting point for my file. Then I'm going to go into Adobe Photoshop. I'm going to use Topaz Denoise AI as a separate layer so that I can have total control over that final little bit of noise reduction and sharpening. And that's what I would suggest to everyone if you want the ultimate results from your high ISO files.
And now it's time for everyone's favorite segment, your photos of the week. Glenn and I picked 3 pictures each again on Instagram, where all of you guys tagged your photos with the hashtag bird photo show.
The first photo that I brought this week is a beautiful shot of this plover crest. What I like about this image is the bird is the star. You know, the bird is so cool. He's showing his crest. He's got that nice bit of iridescence. He's even actually calling a little bit. And I think he's done a good job editing the file. And I just think it's a really nice image of a bird that I've always enjoyed seeing.
I agree, it looks very nice. On my screen at least, it looks a little bit dark. I think you could probably lighten the image overall. I might even be tempted to add a little bit more saturation, a little curves adjustment too. But this is why we like to work in layers, so we can make the whole image brighter, but then use a layer mask to actually make the bright feathers on the top of the head darker again. So then you have an overall brighter, more appealing looking image without blowing out any of the details. And that's why it's so important to learn about layer masks and masking, because it just enables you to do a lot more to your files than just global adjustments. So the first image I brought is of this redneck grebe, and I just kind of loved everything about it. I love the colors. I love that really sort of turquoise colored water with the red of the bird and carrying that bright green leaf. I thought that looked really awesome. And then we have this beautiful low angle and absolutely stunningly calm water. So I thought it was just a overall really nice image. If I had to tweak anything, I would say the bird might have a slight blue cast because the whole image is kind of fairly blue. So you could probably select the bird and just selectively on the bird warm up the colors a little bit to separate them a bit more. But overall, I thought it was a fantastic image.
I agree. Not much I'd change about this one. It looks like a really nice moment and probably an image that either of us would be happy to have in our portfolios as well. All right, my next image is this really cool southern double-collared sunbird. And what I liked about this is it's just a splash of color. Like, you've got this really beautiful little iridescent bird.
I think it's a stunning shot, and I think because the red background works also because the bird has that red chest, and the bird also has the green color, and there's a bit of green and red in the background, so it kind of complements the colors of the bird very nicely. And I think overall, yeah, it's just a stunning shot. It's a stunning bird, great light, great pose, great perch, great background. So there's not much not to like about this image. So overall, a fantastic shot. The second image I picked is of that oscillated turkey, and I just loved all the colors on it with the dark background. You see all the beautiful feather details in this stunning bird. It's actually a bit of a strange crop, but it seems to work. You could potentially think about cropping this a little bit tighter, but then you're kind of cropping into the tail and you're losing out on some of that detail there.
It's just such a striking bird, the plumage on it and that weird head. I would say one thing with this image that I'm not crazy about is that sort of green-black combo to the background. But otherwise, I think it's a really cool shot and it's a crazy looking bird.
Or if you're into editing and this is your cup of tea, you could also just desaturate the green and make it basically all black, because I agree. I think that's the only kind of distracting thing about this image. Overall, fantastic shot.
All right, so my last image is of this beautiful fiery-throated hummingbird. I assume it was photographed in Costa Rica. There's things I like and things I don't like about this image.
Talking about things you like, is it fair to say you like little birds with iridescent colors, just going by your picks this week?
I have been known to like a hummingbird or two. But yes, it is not easy to get a good shot, especially in flight, of the bird showing the iridescent colors. But I'm not crazy about the second bird, which is a Talamanca hummingbird, in behind the bird. To me, it's a dead giveaway that it's at a feeder, first of all. You would be very unlikely to have two birds just interacting in a flower situation like that. And I just think with the wing overlapping the other one, it's kind of a distraction. So I would just simply clean that right up, and all of a sudden we'd have just a nice, striking portrait of the bird that was the intended subject of this photo.
I thought you picked it because you would have liked the two birds because it gets a bit more sort of dimension to the image, but I can totally see what you're saying as well. Having the colors in flight is so special and so cool that you really want to make that one bird stand out, because you are obviously always kind of drawn between the two birds. Getting rid of it, if that's your cup of tea again, then that's definitely something that you can do.
So why don't you guys let us know? We'd love to hear from you. What would you guys do with a photo like this? Would you clone out that background kind of out of focus bird to focus on the star of the show? Or would you leave it because you think it's more interesting with the two birds, or because you like that depth of field? Let us know down in the comments.
And the last image I brought is from the Dude Egg Wildlife, a beautiful sprouse grouse in some stunning colors. I think that's what really spoke to me. It's a nice bird with a nice pose. It's just nice and upright. It's probably just kind of not fully displaying, but partially displaying, and it's just in these beautiful pink kind of autumn colored leaves, which really spoke to me. Could think about maybe removing some of those grass stems in the background. They're a little bit distracting, but at the same time, they kind of give you more of a sense of the habitat potentially. So I'd also be happy to leave them. But overall, I thought it was just a beautiful image with some really nice colors.
I guess I'm the one that's heavy-handed with the clone stamp this week, because for me, I totally agree about everything you said about the image. I love the setting and I love the habitat and the bird is nice. Those are simply a distraction. So I would definitely be removing those.
You could also use a curves adjustment to just bring up the brightness in the whole background a little bit more, and also use a selective color layer to actually match the background color a little bit more to the red color in the foreground, and then just have a more sort of homogeneous background where the foreground kind of fades into the background and the colors match a little bit more.
Well, that just about does it for this episode, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and especially thanks to all of you who have supported the show, supported us by buying our ProSet packs or picking up Jan's masterclass video or my ebooks. We really appreciate it.
And we hope you enjoyed this show. Please let us know all your thoughts in the comments, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and we will see you guys in the next episode of the Bird Photography Show or some of our other videos very soon. Bye!
See you next time, guys.